All right, everybody, welcome. Episode 41. Yes, 41. Uh, yes. Tiny moments, big impacts. And this one's going to be a very interesting episode. It just has to do with, Albert and I, we have a topic every week and we meet and we kind of just throw stuff in the air and just kind of see what sticks. And just before our call, we just start talking about things. And I think you're going to relate a lot to this because what I found for myself is that it's not these high goals that we try to achieve in life, right? You can't just go run a marathon automatically if you don't learn how to do your first mile or do your first 5K or 10K. These tiny moments do create big impacts if and only if you make them a priority. So we'll get more into it, but episode 41, we're super excited. We're getting into the holiday season for the first time. It really felt like fall this week. It got super cold. I was out there with my sweatshirt, jogging outside, and early at 5 a.m. and doing my thing, doing some burpees. It feels kind of weird, but I'm glad we're here back at it. And yes, I got my son here, Albert, and we're excited to rock and roll here.
Let's rock. Well, welcome everyone. So yeah, we have this was a super last minute idea, but I think it's pretty prevalent right now. It's 45 days, I think is what you said, is left in the year. And yeah, just doing some final little check-ins for myself. And it really came to me this week that I gotta really fine-tune what I'm doing. So that way if I'm trying to business plan for next year and just get really, really ready. So I was just wondering, it's like, okay, what do I need to do? What am I missing right now? We talked last week
No,
about the strengths and weaknesses, and as I listened to you, I was like, let me dive into my weaknesses a little bit more. Partially too, what came up is just just dealing with clients and learning how to really communicate with them. And I
yeah,
failed a lot last week in terms of how I needed to communicate
interesting.
because I misunderstood how they wanted to be heard. Um, and so there was a lot of like pressure that I thought I was easing, but I was actually just going back to my people pleasing tendencies just to try to get the deal done.
Interesting.
Um, so my business partner Clinton was trying to show me different ways to go about it, and it wasn't clicking for me. So I just
Mhm.
kept he guided me a certain way, and I would start off really good, and then it would just teeter off to my normal tendencies and my defaults. So
Mhm.
that was a really big thing was what am I defaulting to? Why am I going back to it? And he was showing me something, and then another colleague was telling me different ways on how I can approach it. And so, yeah, this week I was just thinking about how I can change the small little things in my life and why those really impact the rest of my world. Because yeah, it's going to really lead the way. I was telling you beforehand, I like to see the big picture, right? And that seems at home to me.
Yeah,
I want to
yeah,
be very general sometimes, and but I need to get in the weeds of it. And
yeah,
so again, the small details really, really matter. And so
yeah,
I want to just open that conversation
yeah,
up right
yeah,
now, just give you some context to where we came to this idea.
yeah. So interesting, I really looked at myself and I came this isn't my scene. I've developed it over the years, but you don't fall you don't rise to the goals you have in life, okay? Again, we talked a little bit before, and when you go run a marathon, you don't run a marathon right away. Maybe Dave Goggins did it, right? But most of us, you have to actually go run a mile. You got to go run 2 miles. You got to be able to pace yourself. You got to be able to develop the endurance to do it. So we don't rise to our goals. We fall to our standards. We fall to our disciplines. And so for me, what I've had to really, really look at over how I've created this person I am and how I would say evolve in life is really about the old version of me used to overreact about things. The old version of me would come to conclusions. The old version of me would want to run before I crawled. So for you this week, what 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 was it that just triggered you, but also what did you find as you went down that rabbit hole of why you defaulted to what you defaulted to?
That's a really good question. So I want to make sure that, and it's part of the belief that I've really shifted to and trusting in myself. Kind of a little bit of a denial and ignorance of thinking that anything can be done.
Mm,
And there's some benefits to that,
yeah,
right?
right.
Um, the downside of that I want to work on is just being boundary oriented in the sense of being a consultant and understanding that yes, there might be another way to do it, but what is the most efficient way to do it? You know, I might think that there's a way, and um, it could lead to just too many doors being opening, and
Yeah.
then so it's causing for someone to think that there's a way, but I might not be able to be in control of that other door that I think is open, right? And so that's a kind of going around the bush of what really went on, but it was just wanting to communicate with another client and figure out like how do I tell them that this is not going to happen? This is how we have to go about it, and then sticking to that, you know,
Yeah.
and being okay with the no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was one thing, and then another thing was just noticing my patterns of just not being consistent at the gym.
Mm.
I've been inconsistent with running and going to the gym where I can just maintain pretty well
Mm.
because I eat well. I make sure I put good stuff in my body for the most part, and I have the endurance to kind of back it up, right? And so I'm really good at giving the lofty goal, and if I can miss a week, then I'm good at just like sprinting and like
Mm. Mm.
expecting myself to jump to the next goal because I've done
Yeah.
enough in the past, right? And
Yeah.
again, there's some benefits to that because I've
Yeah.
maintained pretty well for a really long time that I can do that. So I was like, let's get more fundamental and having the humility to simplify it, but be more consistent.
Mm.
And so you're really good at like doing your burpees daily,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And so I was like, let me just go super fundamental. So that way, if I can't make it to the gym, at least I'm telling myself I'm gonna do something every day. So I told myself for the rest of the year I was gonna run 2 miles a day, do 200 push-ups and 300 squats and 6 minutes of abs. Pretty simple. You can do it in an hour, right? At least I can do it in an hour. I know I can, right? And so what came up for me is like, oh, okay, I can, it doesn't matter if it's concurrent. I have time when I'm cooking, so I was just busting them out when I was cooking, and then finished it like 10 minutes later when I was right before I started eating. Right, it's like, okay, there's time in the day to do this all, right? So what else am I doing that I am saying that I can't do it? You know,
Mm.
just getting really fundamental this
Yeah.
week
Yeah.
because holidays are coming up.
Yep.
There's going to be excuses to eat
Yeah.
more really yummy food. There's going to be more
Yep.
excuses
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
just lay in the comfy bed as it gets colder, you know? So again, just really just taking it back to what I'm good at
Yeah.
and not just trying to hit the home run every time.
Right. Right. Well, one of the things that there's two questions that come to mind. Okay. So the first one I'm going to ask goes back to your original, you're talking about kind of setting up boundaries for yourself. So what was the fear attached to not telling these clients the truth of what was that fear behind that that prevented you from really being your authentic self? What were you afraid of?
I didn't really feel afraid. I think on a subconscious level I probably did, but it was like I felt like pretty comfortable with it. But I think the hesitation was again just trying to make something happen out of thin ice and not seeing the full picture, you know? I thought I was doing something good and not realizing the box store I was creating. So I think to answer your question about like what fear, I think it was maybe just letting them down, you know, that fear of not being able to execute the way that I believe I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
for them
Yeah.
when it's okay to say no and like be like, hey,
Yeah.
this is not how it's going to be done.
Mhm.
But we can find another way if you're willing to continue
Yeah.
forward, you know.
So you just did it right now, by the way. Let me tell you what we just did. You just said, I don't think there's fear because there was something in you that says, if I say I'm fearful, then it may come across this way. A little bit of people pleasing came out. And then after you got to rethink and rationalize, the fear really came out. The fear was really, I don't want to let my clients down because X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
There's a belief you're holding on to that
Hmm.
if you let them down, this happens. What do you think this happens? This would have happened if that belief system was real?
I mean, they probably would have trusted me more at first, and we wouldn't have gone through the charade of
Yeah,
the chaos that ensued
yeah,
afterwards, right? We would have
yeah.
gone to the solution probably quicker.
Right, right.
Um, and that's what I realized too,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
like we got it done, but
yeah.
it just took 3 days instead of it taking one, you know?
Right. So then the second part, right, regarding your, so I'll give you an example. There's a guy I'm coaching right now, okay, and one of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago was his. He said, Albert, I really admire you because of what you're doing and the changes you've made, and I'm just curious, like how are you able to get it done? And I said, David, the reason why is there's a word called commitment. And if you're his issue was he was saying yes to everything and no to nothing, right? So kind of like you and I are at sometimes. And I said, what's your definition of commitment? I go, my definition is non-negotiable. So maybe your definition is different than mine. That's why you're doing too many things. You're saying yes to too many things. So for you, right? What do you think honestly, right? These things you're telling yourself, you're going to do this and you're going to do this. Is it a goal that you want, or is it a commitment that you gave yourself?
I mean, my commitment was to like do the best for my client, and I think at the time I was wanting to look out for the best interest, and I think I was blinded by that, um, and not just like taking a step back
Yeah.
and saying like, is
Yeah.
this really for my best interest? Sometimes like I can
Yeah.
be too
Right.
close to the problem, and
Yeah.
if I just taken a step back, like, okay, what is really going on here? I think that would have gone in. Like again, the
Yeah.
intentions were there, but the activity wasn't,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm referring to the
So,
exercise because where you, yeah.
oh, okay. Um,
Is it a goal or is it a commitment? And what's your
yeah, I
definition?
mean, it was just a goal, right? It wasn't that important
Yeah.
to me,
Right.
and I think it's just easy again just to say I'm good today,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that happens to me sometimes, and so yeah, for me it was like, hey, what am I really doing here
Yeah.
if I want to continue
Yeah.
like pushing myself?
Yeah. And I think that's where, what I'm getting at is that's what I had to go through. So a lot of people kind of know my story, but I think one of the reasons why I was able to adapt and quote unquote change these habits that I had of getting up a little bit later or drinking or eating what I wanted or going out or whatever you want to call it, right? I wasn't quote unquote disciplined. And the discipline that I had to really look at was, okay, Albert, you say you want to be this different person. You say you want to look differently. You say you want to act differently. You say you want to show up differently. You say you want all these things you want to do, right? So is it a want or is it a have to? And then what I did, because I had a coach, I had a life coach, and I had a personal trainer, is I only had my personal trainer 3 days a week, and I had my life coach every 2 weeks. So out of those days, I really had 21 days to myself. And so what I ended up doing with these tiny little moments that I did is in between those days, I remember one of the first commitments I made was just to wake up every morning and thank God for being alive. I had never done that before. And it seemed like it was really easy, but I failed it for the first 2 weeks. I would get up, forgot about it. Oh shit, I did do that. And then finally, when I was like, okay, no, we're going to do it today. I got up and I said, thank God for being alive. And then okay, I did it for a week. And then the next time I was like, okay, let me get up and do some push-ups. Let me do I could barely do like 10 push-ups. Let me do like 10 push-ups. So I was like, let me do at least 10. And then I was like, okay, let me wake up and I'm going to say, thanks God. And then I'm going to do push-ups. And then I was like, okay, let me do 25 crunchies. So all these little tiny little things I started doing, next a month goes by. Next 2 months go by. So I started rebuilding this characteristic, this habit, because for me, it started to be I didn't know at that time, but it started becoming a non-negotiable because I wanted to become this person, so I had to change certain things about me. So this experience that you had this past week, what what really did you learn about yourself that you didn't know that was still present?
It was how easy it is to still be complacent.
Yeah.
Um, Again, I found different ways to get it done if I knew I had other things that I wanted to do, right? And so I don't know if I mentioned on here or if it was before or not, but like I was just cooking and I was like, well, I mean, I could just wait for it to cook or I could just buzz out some push-ups real quick. And I was like, all right, my roommates might come
Yeah.
around the
Yeah.
corner and they'll be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
But I was like, let me just do them. And then I was
Yeah.
like, flip my eggs, and then
Mm,
just bust out some more. Like it's
yeah,
gonna get done, right? And I was
yeah,
like, okay, wow, I can do this,
yeah,
Like I don't have to just do it all at once,
right,
And so I was
right,
like, okay, like what else am I doing that I can
yeah,
find some time to really get focused in?
right,
So, just really self-reflecting on
yeah,
why I think I have to do it a certain way, you know?
yeah,
Because I can find it to get done. So it's just where can I insert it when it's needed, and
yeah,
then I can show up for whoever else when that time comes too, and I
yeah.
can I can go be present with them, and not feel like, oh shoot, I have to go get this done when I get home.
Yeah. Well, I love about that. So what I love about you just seeing your growth, like as a dad, right? I'm seeing my son grow before my eyes. He's 26 years old. And I remember seeing shifts in you, just the progression of when you decided to join the men's group and how that evolved. And there was some quirkiness there and uncomfortability there. And then you became the leader, what was called the captain, right? You became the captain of that. And there was growth there, right? So what I love about where you're at is this self-reflection, and I think that's where a lot of men, talk men specifically because we're men. I think that's where a lot of men can really learn more, and they choose not to because of their ego, because of addictions or vices. But the self-reflection really is it's what Goggins called the self-autopsy. It's this self-examination of where am I at and where am I falling short. I remember a great question that was posed to me. Jordan Peterson talks about it a lot. He's like, what's that one thing that you're bad in, that you're doing wrong? What's that one thing you're doing wrong? And if you could change it and you would change it, would impact your life? Ask that question, but be careful because you're going to get an answer that you're not going to like. But if you were to take that answer and really look at it, that's the self reflection. In my opinion, that's God. That's the internal consciousness telling us that what we need to do. And I'm curious for you, like, what was it? We're going to rabbit hole. What was it for you? Was it a year ago, 2 years ago? Do you know? Because I know when mine was. Do you know when that voice in you started saying, I needed to self reflect more so that I can be better? Do you know? Was it an incident? Was it a moment? Was there something that you remembered that caused you to say, I need more self accountability?
Um, I mean, I can pinpoint some certain areas. I think it was around the time when your incident happened, when, you know, you got cuffed, and then I was also drinking a lot during that, coincidentally around that time too. And then I went home, and like it was kind of perfect timing that I went home.
Mm,
And I don't remember how, but somewhere around then, right before, I was like almost knew that I needed to
mm,
kind of put myself away from my own,
mm.
my own environment, right? So I
Yeah,
think it was right around then. Right before I was like, okay, I know I'm gonna be alone for 2, 3 months at
yeah,
home, right? I didn't know who I was gonna be around, and it was gonna
yeah,
be a family. I was like, fuck, I have
yeah.
to go back to family. But it just seemed like the right path too, because I was, getting an internship as well. So it was like
Right.
I was telling myself that there was good things happening, but I was also a little hesitant too, because like, well, I'm gonna be alone. I know it can be good alone, but what am I gonna find?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it was around there where I really started to like look, okay, what can I do to really progress?
Mm,
My buddy, so he was also wanting to do something too. So we would send each other podcasts, of like what was interesting. So I think that was probably the first
mm,
step in that little direction. That I was like, okay, I know I'm gonna be by myself, and this will allow me time to pinpoint what's going on. I would say I did some of it pretty well and some of it not so well, right? I could have, probably been more
yeah.
social in certain areas, and sometimes I just would seclude myself because it felt natural,
Yeah.
right? That was probably the first step, and then again, 2, 3 years later, when I decided to join the men's group, that's when I really, really wanted to do it because again, I knew I was going to be alone.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a common pattern with me is like willingly being okay to be alone, but
Yeah.
not just hiding,
Yeah.
because it's easy to hide.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, I appreciate that because as you're saying that, what one of the big moments for me was when I got handcuffed, when I got put in jail. I remember I'm in jail, dude, and I remember vividly. It's like fucking 1 in the morning, and and I'm in this jail cell, dude. And there's two other dudes in there, and I'm not screaming, but I'm knocking on the door. I'm like, "Do you know who I am?" And they didn't pay attention to me. I was just nobody, but I had this ego, like, "Do you know who I am? Like, get me out of here!" Like, it was like this. I was freaking out, and I just remember as the guys were leaving, I was by myself for the last 4 hours in this jail cell, and I just remember saying, "I'm like, what are you doing? Like, how did you get here?" And I remember like something has to change. Like you're a fucking criminal, right? You're being treated like a criminal because you're acting like that. I remember this voice was inside of me saying, it can change, but you have to change. It was like over and over. It can change. You got to change. And I just remember being like, I don't know what to do. Like I was in this jail cell and I was so ashamed, dude. I was like, how did I get here? And I just remember that was like the little pebble in the pond. And then as the year progressed, and I talk about in the book when I'm in my bed and I have this drink in my bed, it's at 9 in the morning. I made an old fashioned, it spills all over my bed. That moment right there was another moment of self awareness where I was so disgusted with myself because you weren't talking to me. Kaylee was in school. I was by myself. I was by myself. No one knew. No one gave a fuck about what I was doing. And I think it's these little moments we talk about, right? They don't have to be moments that we're being consistent in. It's these little moments that happen to us, dude, that when we're by ourselves and if we're really, really honest, we know the answers, but our ego is so powerful that it doesn't want to hear it. It's everybody else's fault. It's their fault. Why did she do this to me? How come they're mad at me? As opposed to saying, I did this. I created this person. And then I remember as I was coming out of that, I remember when I decided to hire a coach. I remember when I hired Stefanos, and it was going to be like 24 grand for 6 months. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. I had no idea because I was paying alimony, child support, all this stuff that was just expensive. But I just remember I had one word, bro. One word. I had hope. I was like, okay, things are going to get better. At least I have someone that's going to help me. And again, these little moments we're talking about, these little moments to where I just had a little bit of hope. Okay, it's going to get better. But what am I going to do differently? What am I going to do differently? And I think that's where a lot of men, fail is because they don't take the accountability, like what I have to do to get better. Not what the system has to do, not what the girlfriend or the sister or the wife or the work or the economy. What do I have to do to get better?
Yeah, and it's interesting too, like can't really control, but how much we can at the same time. That's always fascinating. Me too. Because like you have to take personal responsibility, right? You have to like see the small little things that make up your day, the small little things that make up your
Right.
interactions with people. But then also like you don't really know how people are going to take it too.
Hmm.
That's I think the more I become aware
Yeah.
is it's really hard for people to it's hard for me to really
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
like how do I make that big of an impact but
Hmm.
so little at the same
Hmm.
time. Um and it's cool the way that you shared like that you were willing to take that step and just know that like this is at the end of the day like I know I'm not going to really mean anything but the family the small interaction that I do have is going to mean everything to them too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've shared with me a lot about Stefanos and how he's been able to just like transcend like what you had to go through and like really meticulously dive into like what's really going on in your brain, right? So I guess my question to you with all this context of just like holding on to all that and wanting to make sure you break free and don't go back
Yeah.
to it, did you think that you could make that big of an impact in your own world, when you were that like felt that small?
Mhm. No, absolutely not. I when I was in the state of mind, think about this, it was the first time, again, men. So if you're watching this, okay, the big problem men have is that we don't have problems, is that we don't have any problems.
Mhm.
We have a bunch of problems. And that's the problem is it was the first time in my life that I got to talk to a man and him share his experiences and then me really just be vulnerable enough to let him know like this outpouring of I had so much angst in me. I had so much pain that I didn't care about you. I didn't care about Kaylee. I didn't care about anybody else. I just wanted to stop feeling my pain. And there's this. Have you heard the Serenity Prayer before? God grant. So this will make it make sense. I didn't know this at the time, but this is what helped me as I look back. It's God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, and the courage to accept the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. For the first time in my life, what Stefanos helped me with was to be accountable for what I was in control of. Me, this person, not what you all were doing or what was coming. I had no vision of, at that time, this is January, February, March, April of 2020. I just wanted to stop feeling pain. When I when I broke my leg before I went to the desert was my, again, these little moments, bro. It's just interesting. The only reason why I went to, this is where synchronicity is important. This is where life is happening for you. When you make a decision to be different, you're going to have things that come in your life that are going to synchronize. And you're the only one that's going to fuck it up because you're going to say yes or you're going to say no because your ego. When Stefanos, we were on my 6th month and we decided to go another 3 months. That's when it all broke open loose. Because if I hadn't gone with him for 7, 8, 9 months, I wouldn't have gone to the desert and I wouldn't have healed myself with my mom. Because in those months, I took a chance. It was $12,000 more dollars, but I took a chance because I was honest, bro. He said, I don't think you're ready yet. I think we need to go another 3 months. I go, I know, I feel the same way. When I let that go, he went on the desert journey a month after that. He's the one that when he came back, he's like, I got something for you, bro. Now he didn't go to Rainbow Rock Mountain. He went to another place. But he goes, I got something for you. I go, what? He goes, I went on this amazing journey. It was about finding yourself. Do you know what a rites of passage is? I had no idea. He's like, we fasted for 4.5 days. I'm like, what? No clue. I had no clue, right? And he's like, I think you should go. I go, I'm in. I didn't even know what it was. I'm in. But another decision happened before I knew any details. That aligned me to then meet Jetty and the Rising Ram movement, but I wouldn't have met them if I hadn't hired Stefanos. I wouldn't have gone if I hadn't gone to hire for another 3 months. This is why it's so important that when I talk about your passion, you have to follow it as far as you're going to take it, because you know where it's going to go. But to answer your question, the vision of me becoming the person I needed to become who I am now only happened honestly when I broke my leg. When I broke my leg and I had to read all the stuff that I never read. I didn't listen to any videos that Jetty sent. I didn't go follow any emails. But when I broke my leg and I'm sitting down and I finally had to calm down and settle down and slow down, I watched the Severance video. And the Severance video opened me up because he's like, literally, people are going to sever. And I was like, I literally broke my leg. So for me, when I started seeing these synchronicities, I was like, what if? What if I could change? Then when I got back from the desert, whole new vision. When I got to the desert, I was like, I see what can be. So my verbiage changed from what if, which is a little bit lack of faith, right? It's more of hope, to even if. Even if I fail, even if whatever happens, I'm not going to turn back on myself. I'm going to reconstruct myself. I'm going to reconstruct my family. I'm going to become the man I want to become. And someday my family may come back to me, but Albert Chavez is going to do what he needs to do regardless, even if you don't come back in my life. I'm going to do this because this is who I want to become.
Yeah, it's really talking about like trust and faith. It sounds like even if is
Even if
going,
it's faith, no matter what, I'm going to do
yeah,
it. No matter what?
it's going through it. I mean, that's what faith is, right? Is
Yeah.
believing in it wholeheartedly, but knowing that it's going to happen and trusting in it with all your might. That's really powerful, honestly,
Yeah. I,
because it
I didn't even know
changed.
you just, I thought you knew that story. But yeah, if it wasn't for Stefanos, I wouldn't have gone on this journey. But again, here's the power of decisions. These little moments, again, the whole thing, little moments, big impact. The moment, bro, that I said yes to becoming his client, and he even said, I said in my book, he's like, okay, because we're aligned. He was telling some things on an interview, discovery call. He's like, it's going to be $24,000 for 6 months. And I paused for a second. And he even said, he goes, if that's too much, I got someone else that I can help you with. I go, no, no one else can help me. Only you can.
Mhm.
I go, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'll figure it out. 4 grand, he debited from my card right then, and I was in. That little decision, Albert, completely changed my life forever because all these other little things started coming along that if I hadn't made that decision, who knows where I would have been. That's why I'm so passionate about men not having excuses and commitments. These words aren't just words to me. Like I live by them because the power of commitment, the power of a decision, the power of action, all these things can lead to things that you really want. But if not you, but if someone's wishy washy about what they want, they're going to wishy washy what they get.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like it was my last life, dude. I had no more lives left. 9 lives were done. So for me to have that chance, that little bit of hope that I'm going to be able to fix this person that was going on with me and not go down the rabbit hole of becoming the person I don't want to become. And then all these little synchronicities, that all this stuff happened in 2020 to where it was the foundation of the man I am today, which is why you and I are here talking about this.
Yeah, it's really powerful on how much language is important to us
Yeah.
too. I kind of think that was like, what if seemed natural to me? Like, what if I could do this? It's a dream, right? It's a hope, right? But just the changing of even if you talked about a lot about like commitment and goals, distinguishing those two, and I'm even wanting to check like myself and my friends more like hearing the word like I might do this, and I do this a lot, and
Yeah.
I'm like I'm gonna start checking people because I need to start checking myself
Yeah. Yeah.
because I it just feels like a cop out, I might do this,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
it's half it in, half it out, and I don't know. I personally need to look at the people I've had in my life, and see like are these people who I want to keep going with,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think I'm so young, and there's so much happening at light speed
Yeah.
that again, just not only who I surround myself, but what I'm listening to is so important right
Yeah.
now because it's like I have to think of myself as a parabola kind of. I need to traject myself up because
Yeah.
logarithmically, like it'll scale up very quickly, and I don't
Yeah.
know when that's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so something as small as the way I talk is something that I can control,
Mm-hmm.
and what I listen to is what I can control.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, like, I want to get back to being really careful of how I speak and what I want to listen to because it's infectious in both good and positive ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And yeah, I just think just renegotiating with myself and what is important and
Yeah.
sticking with that is part of what self-awareness is.
I also think, this is what I've learned lately is again, I use this word definitions. Like find out what your definitions are. Um, for example, you and I talked about love a few weeks ago. Our definition of love is different for men than it is women. It's even for each individual. And but if you understand your definition, so why are definitions important? Because it's how you view the world, right? For example, if I were to say honest because people are on, if I were to say Republican, people have their definitions of what a Republican. If I said Democrat, you have your definitions. Doesn't mean it's right. It means it's your definition. And then what you do is like, so why do I believe that? And you believe that because of your environment, because of your parents, because of your neighborhood, because of where you're at school. All these things factor into your definitions. What we need to do better of is do those definitions fit who I am now? And what you're going to find is a lot of times they're not aligned anymore. So then you're going to ask yourself, why am I still holding on to that definition, which is called a belief? And you'll find out if you go 3 layers down that belief system, there's another belief that's attached to this definition belief you have up here. And when you get down here and you're like, well, that's kind of dumb, then you'll realize that these definitions no longer exist or mean or are valuable to you. And so you eliminate them and you question them because you have this belief system that's really holding on to this. And then that, I'll give you an example. What changed for me is, you know, something as simple as I used to get so butthurt, though. You may not remember, but your mom and I would get butthurt. I'll say me specifically, but we had a household where you had to put your dishes away and did certain things we all had to do. Well, when I ended up living with that other woman for a while and with her kids, I had that belief system of if you don't put this away, then it's disrespectful. Who is disrespectful for? It was my definition of what that meant, but I was projecting it on them. They had no idea because they hadn't grown up that way. So now that I live by myself, I'm like, why was that a big deal? It's because I held on to this definition that said, if you as an individual come into my house and we are in union and this bothers me and you continue not doing it, then you must not respect me. Therefore, there's a disconnect and therefore I have to punish you. It's just because that's how I grew up. So these definitions um, uh, uh, have skewed me in a way to where I was 50 years old and I was holding on, and I finally realized those definitions no longer serve me anymore. And that's the power of self-awareness. The self-awareness really is looking at your definitions and your beliefs and saying, are they still aligned with who I am? And do they serve me? And lots of times they no longer serve me because it's built on when you were 9, when you were 8, when you were 15, and now you're a man. They no longer constitute how you run your life. And that is what holds a lot of people back.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how personal we take things. And
Yeah.
well, I guess it comes down to the question of like, who are we, you know? And that's a daunting question to ask, right? And even dissect, right? Is because I don't really ask myself that question too often, as much I think as I should. Because I don't know, when you're building yourself up, right? You have this idealistic version of yourself, right? Of like what it is. So how do you distinguish what's really idealistic versus like being who you truly are? I think that's sometimes difficult to address because again, going back to the weaknesses portion of it, you find a lot of holes in what's good. And again, those ideals are ideals for a reason, right? But we want to live closely to that without
Well,
it feeling inauthentic.
yep, yep. I think the question really is who do you want to be? Who do you most desire to be? Right? I talk about that all the time. For example, for me, you and I are different, right? I'll tell you a story, dude. The reason why my chest is so big, I'm a big dude. I remember when I was 19 years old and I saw this guy that was a couple years older than me, good looking dude. I worked with him. And he had his shirt off, dude, and his chest was just chiseled. And I was like, I want a chest like that. I always wanted that look. So when I decided a couple years ago how I wanted to look, I looked up 300. I want to look like Leonidas. I want to look like that guy. I fucking love that movie, 300. So for me, your definitions of characteristics, who you want to be, is going to be different than mine. And there's no wrong answer. But who do you want to be? So how I wanted to be is I didn't know I can grow hair. I loved beards. If I could, I probably wear earrings again, but I don't want to anymore because I did it one time. But I love the tattoos. I love how I look. I love how I've always wanted to be an expressive guy and not hold back. I always wanted to tell the truth and not lie. I always wanted to be respectable to myself and other people. I always wanted to have, when I walk into a room, People look at you like, who's that person? So there's characteristics that I wanted to become. The key is, we talked about it before, is if you're here and you have this avatar of who you want to become and you're not close to that and you want to be there, then you have to look at all these things that are weaknesses that are you can eliminate. You don't add, you have to eliminate, and then that brings it closer, and then you can add to what you want to become so you can become that. So it's really, who do you want to become? And then you decide what steps you need to make to become that person, regardless of what anybody thinks, anybody says, or anybody cares about. Because it's you. You get to create your own actor, your own character, your own avatar based upon who you want to become. So it's who you most desire to be. That is what fulfills you. That's what fulfills me.
How do you I want to address that point too, but I think that last portion, how do you determine like being an actor versus being yourself?
So I think they're two in one. So think about this: is there's actually study. There's a book. Michelle and I were talking about the other day. There's a book, and I'll phrase it for you. There's a book that's about 1919. It was made. Okay, and this author talks about, if you want to create the person you need to become, you need to act like that, and you'll eventually become it. You need to dress like that. You need to talk like that. That's why Tom Hanks is a great actor, like in Castaway and Forrest Gump. He becomes those roles. That's why Heath Ledger was the best Joker ever. He became embodied in that. And when you embody that thing, sometimes you don't know the difference between the true self and the person you're going to become. So you eventually become that thing. So it is a smoke and mirror for a while, because your subconscious knows you're lying to itself. But the more that you continue to act, this is how you break addictions, by the way. You don't break addictions by just stopping to drink or smoke. You break addictions, first of all, by addressing certain weaknesses that you can get rid of first, whether it's maybe your habit of being late, or maybe you lie, maybe you say yes too much. You break these habits down to where you start building confidence. And then you can attack this big thing, because you've already shown that this new character doesn't lie. He doesn't wake up late. He's on time. He makes his bed. All these little habits then fortify the person that you say you are going to become. So then when you say, as an actor, this actor no longer drinks. This actor no longer smokes. You're not faking it anymore, because you've proven it to yourself by developing these other habits that contradict the old self. But you have these wins that say, this is who we are now. And that's how you do it. But why people quit is because they want a 30-day plan. They want a 60-day plan. They want a 66-day habit trial. No, it doesn't work that way. You don't develop habits in 66 days, because there's an end in mind. You develop a new self when it becomes a life mission.
Mm.
When it becomes a life mission, there's no timetable now. Now you're not doing 90 days, 120 days, 1 year from now. I'm going to quit if I do this. No, the daily actions, you're going to fall back, but it's the daily actions that fortify this confidence that you give yourself, because you're doing what the actor is supposed to do, and you're living that way. And then you eventually become that person. That's what all I did. Why I stopped drinking so easily is because I was taking 3 months on, 3 months off, but I was faking myself. But when it came down to it, one of my first clients was an alcoholic. I was waking up early. I was taking cold showers. I take cold showers every day, bro. Since August of 2020, I don't take warm showers ever. Cold showers 2 or 3 times a day. This is the new Albert. This is me. This is how I live my life. All these habits fortified that when August or April 22nd, April 15th come up 2022, and I had this client that was an alcoholic, I couldn't drink anymore if I was going to coach him, because then I'd be out of integrity. So I
Right.
stopped this quickly, because I had already developed these habits that said, this is what Albert does. And so it was just a confirmation. We don't drink anymore. This Albert doesn't drink. It was honestly that easy, but it took 4 years to get there.
Yeah.
That makes sense? Yeah.
Yeah, again, it's funny just how attached we get to this stuff, because we can do anything we want to do, right?
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes the environment will boost us to be in a certain way. Like, for example, your client will boost you towards doing it, but you already had it in you, right? And so what is your addiction? What is your new avatar? That you definitely simplified it in managing, it's always about the gaps, right? That's where the
That's
first thing that
it.
came to mind was just like the imposter syndrome, right?
Yep.
Like the
Yep.
reason why you feel that imposter syndrome, which is good, that means you're stretching your boundaries a
Yep.
lot of the times,
Yep.
if the gap is too big, then maybe,
Yep.
when you find a way to shrink it. But you talked about addition by subtraction, the imposter syndrome, and making sure that you are this new character and you are going to feel like you are an actor at times.
Yep.
But those new habits are going to kick in eventually. You just have to trust that they are
Yep.
going to
Yep.
not put a timetable on it.
Yep.
Because let's say you do it 66 days and then the next day you don't feel obligated to do it, but you're probably going to go back to it, right? So you put this timetable on it and
Yep.
then you just track to it.
Yep.
Sober Octobers don't work.
Yep.
They might work in the long run, but
Yep.
they don't work in the short term.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
that's
man.
fascinating. We have about like 10, 15 minutes. Yeah, that was really cool. Just to simplify it, I think I don't know. We've done so many different activities, like so many different Goggins work. I've done so many different like Goggins workouts and so many different like styles and techniques. And I just think the less pressure I put on the number, the less pressure I do it, the more easy that it is.
Yeah.
And I guess this idea of balancing the good pressure and the bad pressure that you put on and the imposter syndrome, it's all necessary, right? To get you to that next level that we talk about. But why do you feel like now, like for a younger person, why do you feel like everyone feels like they have to be like this super idealistic version of themselves? Why do you think that we can't just be this?
Hmm.
And we feel like we have to like almost like pretend like we have to be like this top-notch person when they're not yet.
Yeah, I think that's a society thing. So if you really break it down, right? I don't look at it like that. I think people's expectations is what's causes stress in people's life because there's an expectation that mom and dad has, society, we should be, shouldn't be. How do you know? Here's how I adapt, bro. Okay. I created this new person, not because someone told me. And I'm gonna get spiritual for a minute, okay? Do you think God created us or creation or the universe created us just to enjoy life? No. You think he created a species to be comfortable? No. You think he created, if you were going to create a human being, wouldn't you put immense amount of pressure on them so they become the very best version or see if they can pass that test? I believe that you need to become the person you need to become based upon what creation, the universe is telling you to do.
Mm,
That's why people are so anxious and stressful because they're not in alignment with creation's telling them to do. They're doing something different. They want to become a fucking DJ and they suck at becoming a DJ when they need to be some spokesman or maybe something over here. They're not in alignment. Your dad, I haven't arrived by all means. But what I did, I stopped listening to my ego and what the ego was saying, wear a tie, be a mortgage lender, do this, act a certain way. My conscience was like, no, tell fucking people the truth. Tell them what you went through. Tell them that you got thrown in jail for being an asshole. Tell them there was a domestic violence dispute that was charged against you. Whether it was true, false, or indifferent, you put yourself in that situation. Tell them that you lost your family not because of alcohol addiction, but because you were so enamored with your ego that you weren't willing to work on your marriage to become a better husband and a better father.
mm,
So I've had to be super. That's what it was telling. That's why I wrote the book. The book was a great example of when I called you in May. I was having these downloads like, you got to write the book. You got to write the book. I couldn't sleep at night. I was fucking typing at 2 in the morning.
mhm,
It's about this passion. If people spent more time focusing on what they were created to do, you weren't created to be a fucking realtor, dude. You were created to be something more than that. You weren't
mm,
created to be, work at Lowe's. Those are jobs. You were created for something better. But we're getting so enamored with TikTok and fucking Instagram and what you're supposed to be, as opposed to who, again, it goes back to this, who do you want to be? And then find the people that are going to get you there, seek the support that's going to mold you to get there, and then you'll get there. For example, for me, you know what my new vision is? I want to become a pilot.
mm,
Yes. That trip I took to Mexico, I want to learn how to fly a plane. It was so incredible for me.
Mm,
And so, am I a pilot? I'm not a pilot now, but I have to figure out how to get there.
mm,
That's my new vision to do that. Whatever your vision is, people are not focusing on the vision creation's given them. They're focusing on who they need to be to maintain themselves in this world,
mm.
especially your generation. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah. We're just checking a box.
Well, and they're not living, and that's why they're so stressed and depressed because they're anxious about the future and they're depressed of what they haven't done and they can't be in the present because they're not listening to their higher consciousness telling them today, I know you hate your job, go quit your job and go write that book. I know you hate your job, you want to go travel to Paris, go to Paris. But we're so in the scarcity mindset of what if? What if is scarcity fearful, as opposed to saying, even if I fail, I'm still going to be alive. Even if I fail, even if I lose my family and friends because they don't agree with me, I'm still going to be able to do it. I get to control myself.
Yeah.
Accept the things that you cannot change and have the courage to change the things you can. That's a serenity pair.
You're in control of you.
All of it. And that's why I'm so attracted to Stoics. I didn't know this mindset, bro, was Stoic mindset. I had no idea. So
Yeah.
again, like attract lights. Guess what? The first book that I got was Epictetus. I had no idea who he was, but I saw it on a post. Let me get that book. And he's like, good is good. This is what good is. I'm like, oh my God, that's what I've been thinking about. And it literally said, self mastery is key. I was like, I've been talking about that. It literally said, become the person you want to become. I didn't make this up. It's what we talk about because we get so enamored with everything else in the matrix. We're in the matrix. Your generation, my generation, we're all in this matrix thinking that we're supposed to be certain roles and things. No. Become the person you need to become. Follow the value system that you have and become super selfish, Albert. You have to be so selfish in becoming the person you can become. Because then, when you master the person you become, then you get to transcend and share it with everybody else. But everybody wants to share everything else, but not fixing who they need to become.
Hmm.
And so they're not authentic. They're fake because they're telling me what I should be, but they're not even living that way.
Yeah.
Your dad, I can tell you, your dad lives the way he talks. I wasn't always that way.
Right.
Even growing up, I wasn't that way. You were growing up. I wasn't this person until 2020 when I decided that I needed to become the person I need to become. I needed to change certain things. I need to subtract, then add, and then I needed to mold myself into the man that I needed to become because I lacked that all my life.
Mm.
The little moments, these little things create these big moments, right? Little moments, big impacts. If you can create these little moments every day, the impact you're not going to feel for maybe 4 or 5, 6, 10 years later. But think about this: if I hadn't made the Albert, this is bigger than. If I hadn't made that decision, bro, Alyssa wouldn't be in my life.
Yeah.
She told my mom. I told you. She told my mom 10 years ago that I don't know if I want my dad in my life.
Yeah.
He's not making any effort. I didn't even know that conversation happened.
Yeah.
So little moments, big impacts. The whole, the whole enchilada here.
Ah,
What's on your mind? Curious.
I'm just thinking, man, like, I don't know, just been thinking about family a lot,
Yeah,
you know, just looking forward to the holidays right now.
yeah.
And the little moments are going to be there where I would love to be there with family more. And so I'm excited to put this to the test and just be very present with you guys and share that. I think again, just minimizing those distractions and taking action on it by just being there for y'all, when I can be. And I think also just realizing that like we only get so many days left with each other, because every year it'll probably be a little bit less. It'll probably level out, right? But it'll
Yeah,
be a little bit less with you guys as I progress towards like
yeah,
getting closer to having my own family.
yeah.
unless we can all commune together
Yep.
later in life.
Hmm.
So those little actions right now have to be okay, and we'll be able to, make those memories bigger when we can. So
Yeah, man, this was a fun one. I really appreciate you you're bringing the light because you know, we talk. How many dads and sons get to talk like this, right?
yeah,
And I get to learn something about you. You get to learn something about me. And I think why this dialogue is important, like I said, why we created this is to share the awareness, to share what ifs, and it's, bro, like I think people get so enamored with making mistakes. We only learn by making mistakes.
mhm,
But if you make the same mistake over and over, now it's a choice.
mhm,
You're choosing that. And what you and I have done is that we've chosen to look at the mistakes, make corrections, continue to ask questions, make more corrections, and it's never complete, but we're still progressing to grow. We're still progressing to grow so that we could become more relatable, become more closer, become more, I would say, valuable to each other. And we could have these conversations because my gift to you is someday you're going to have this conversation with your kids and
yeah,
your son and your daughters, whatever you have, right? And the power of that, like, wow, like that's healing by itself. And your wife, future wife, conversations like this, and this is why it's powerful for me to learn because every time I'm on a call like this, a new part of me gets to come out, and I love getting passionate like this because it reinvigorates that what I'm doing in life is what I want to do.
mhm.
It's aligned. It's all aligned. Sam, I got a lot of this, so thank you for bringing this up.
Yeah. This came up to me literally like 11 o'clock after I was asleep. So I'm glad we were able to talk to it. Yeah, this was an awesome episode. Just to remind us how important it is to just show up.
Yeah,
For everyone that's watching, we appreciate you guys for showing up every Tuesday because we're going to be here every Tuesday, and we just want
sir.
to share our message that we feel is, again, this is just a life thing,
Yeah.
right? It's not anything special. It's not anything unique. It's just us observing life. So we'll be here every single Tuesday at 6:30. The Legacy Project. I'm Albert with my co-host Albert Chavez, my father. And thank you so much for another great episode. We'll see you guys